Welcome to The Shift Show with Adriana Bucci. Join me every week to learn all about narcissistic abuse recovery, healing from physical and emotional pain after the abuse, and everything else to do with toxic people and how they affect your physical, emotional, and mental health. And no, you are not the crazy one. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Let's get right to it. Hello and welcome to episode number 37 of the podcast. I know I have been slacking like crazy with this podcast. I apologize. I guess I'm back and I will definitely be back even more in the new year. So this might be my last episode for 2020. I might throw another episode together before the end of the year. If not, have a fantastic new year. But I figure, I should probably get back to the podcast first and foremost because it's very helpful for people. And in this episode, I am going to be talking about how family is not everything and you do not have to see your family this year if you don't want to. So, I know this is a huge thing for adult children of narcissists, so this is really who this episode is for. If, this isn't something that applies to you, there's people out there who really believe that family is everything and family can do no wrong and all that fun stuff, and this episode is not for those people because, those people who don't understand that sometimes family can be the biggest source of dread and horribleness in one's life. They just don't get it, and that's fine. So this episode does not apply to anybody in that situation. This is for my fellow scapegoats, my fellow black sheep of the family. And I wish I did a podcast on this earlier because I did have a workshop on this entire thing. The replay is available if you are interested. It will be available until probably Christmas. Might come down sooner. I'm not sure. Might keep it up later. Who knows? But it will be going away at some point in the very near future. So if you're interested in that replay, it's in the episode details, if that interests anybody. It was all about surviving the holidays when you're the family scapegoat. So I'm going to touch on a lot of those topics in this episode. Of course, it won't be as comprehensive as that workshop because that was a good 2.5 hours of content. So it was 2 hours of my actual presentation and a 30-minute Q&A with the live participants that were there. I will be doing a lot more workshops in the future as well, so stay tuned for that. And I'll be talking about it on the podcast too, so you can be aware of it as well. If you're not following me on Instagram, you should be. We are 24K strong over there, which is mind-blowing. And all of my updates get posted there. I'm going to try to get better about posting updates in the podcast, or at least talking about them. And this is, better things for 2021, of course, right? Can't be as bad as 2020 in all aspects of the year. So, the main thing that I just wanted to offer to anybody who's a black sheep of the family or a scapegoat is that it is okay if you don't want to spend Christmas or whatever holidays you celebrate or don't celebrate, or whatever formalities of holidays that you celebrate. You don't have to spend them with your toxic family, okay? You don't. You might feel like you have to, and, if you're not an adult, you probably don't have much choice, obviously, but this is geared towards anyone who's an adult child of a narcissist. So even if you do still live with your family and you're an adult child, you still, there's ways around spending time with your family. And I think this year, especially in 2020, obviously we're in a pandemic, this is a great year for a lot of people with shitty families. If you are living in a part of the world where there's a lockdown, you have the perfect excuse to not see family, and it's okay to be happy about that. Don't feel guilty about that. If you do feel guilty, let yourself feel that guilt, right? Because it's important to express your emotions, like I always say. And the best way to release that guilt is by feeling it and allowing yourself to actually go through it, because where do repressed emotions go when we don't express them? They go nowhere. They stay stuck in your body. You end up with chronic pain like me or something else. And, we all know what happens when we repress our emotions. We die. I'm just kidding. That's dramatic. I mean, we could eventually from the insanity of it all and all the crap that we go through. But, it's very important to express your emotions. So let yourself feel your guilt, and then let yourself be happy about the fact that you have a really good excuse not to see your family, right? And there's narcissistic people in families who will, try and coerce you into spending time with them and say like, well, we're not sick, everyone's fine, blah, blah, blah. And or they're like those deniers that the virus even exists. And I don't know, I think that's another rant for another time. It's just ridiculous. I think there's definitely a degree of narcissism in that for people who just completely think that science is an opinion, because science is just science. But anyways, just throwing some logic in there. So if you don't have to physically see them this year, they could also be trying to pressure you to join a Zoom meeting or something, right? Where you're all spending time together. And again, it's okay to say no to that too. And it might be really scary to say no. You might have never said no before, and that's completely okay. And there's, what emotion is behind the resistance of saying no, right? This is something that is very good to explore within yourself, because it's a boundary. And setting boundaries with toxic family is extremely important. Setting boundaries can look like different things for different people, right? Gray rocking is a boundary. And gray rocking, which I'm sure you know by now, but in case you don't, it's when you take on the personality of a gray rock and you be as boring as humanly possible. And you don't give them any narcissistic supply. And what narcissistic supply is your emotional reaction. Narcissists kind of feed off of that. And it's really weird and difficult to wrap your head around when you are not a narcissist. So I would not recommend trying to make sense out of it, because it's just complete nonsense. And the more you take away their supply, the less power that they have, right? And so if they start on you for oh, join our virtual event or whatever, it's not like you're spending time with anyone else, blah, 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 you can still literally say no. And I would encourage you to say no. And that's why I wanted to drop this podcast episode, at least before the holidays, just in case, because this is probably the podcast episode I would have wanted to hear in the years 2016, 17, and 18 to really solidify my decisions to not spend Christmas with my mom. I'll share a bit of my story because it's very interesting. So basically, as you know, my mom passed away over the summer, and I don't feel guilty about anything. And I don't feel guilty about not spending Christmas with her since 2016. And 2016 was a complete shit show for the Christmas holiday. So I had moved out of my mom's house in March 2016, which I spoke about in previous episodes, I think. I hope. Otherwise, you're probably lost. But long story short, I moved out. And it was, the best decision ever. I actually took on debt for the purpose of moving out, because I just couldn't deal with her anymore. And for anybody struggling with the decision to take on debt versus moving out of their parents' house, if you have some space on your debt for whatever first and last month's rent is, do it. Because your sanity, your mental health, and your peace of mind is worth more than any dollar amount. Now, If it's a life and death thing and you literally cannot survive, that's a different story. I get it. It's COVID. Jobs are scarce. Like, it's a shitty situation. And that really sucks. And, you know, that's a different story. That's understandable. But if you are in a position where, you know, you can either afford to move out or barely afford to move out or be able to, but it's going to cost a little bit of debt, I would encourage you to move out. Again, this is your choice, but I just want you to understand that your mental health is so important. And when you actually remove yourself from that situation, you're able to think more clearly, you're able to put things more into perspective, and you might even be able to find a better paying job because you will see that you are worth it, right? Like, everybody's situation's obviously very different, right? So if this does not apply to you, like, this does not apply to you. But if this does apply to you, I would encourage you to, you know, start taking some sort of action to gain some sort of independence in your life, because you need to get the fuck out of there. You know, if you're an adult living with your parents and they're narcissistic and they're, you know, potentially financially abusing you, like, get the fuck out of there, because it is not going to get better. It's not going to end. And the sooner you get out and, you know, figure this shit out for yourself, the sooner you will feel better, the sooner you'll be able to rebuild your life, the sooner you'll be able to pay off that debt and, you know, start thriving, because these people who are your toxic family are only going to be holding you back. So yeah, that's my little spiel on that. So I'm going to talk about Christmas 2016 now. Went off topic there a little bit. But yeah, I basically walked out during dinner. It was during dessert. It was good times. So me and my then fiance, now husband, we went with the dog, and it was a fucking disaster of a dinner, right? Like, it was Christmas Eve, because you know, apparently it's like an Italian tradition that you only care about Christmas Eve when you're Italian. I don't know. Christmas Day, she could have never cared less about what I did. Like, I could have gone out partying with my friends on Christmas Day. As long as I was home for Christmas Eve, she was happy. So I guess that's a cultural thing. So yeah, the usual plan was like Christmas Eve with my mother and then Christmas Day with my in-laws. So that would have been the plan going forward. But Christmas 2016 was the last Christmas I spent with my narcissistic mother. So we brought the dog. It was a shit show. She, of course, made everything about herself. And 2016 was the year where I started to, like, actually realize the truth about everything. Like, I learned about my dad not being such a bad guy. I learned about, you know, the fact that my mom stole money from me. All this shit that I learned. And everything was a shit show, basically, right? And I was like a year into my chronic pain. It was just a gong show that year. And, you know, I obviously moved out, I left, and she started, like, talking shit about my father during Christmas. And I was not having it anymore, because she had brainwashed me for the majority of my life, which you know about if you heard my podcast episode about, oh my God, what was it about? How I found out my mother was a narcissist. And, you know, like, just, I knew about the parental alienation already. So it was just very triggering for me for her to talk negatively about my father, because I knew it was all bullshit. I knew it wasn't true. And I was starting to put the pieces together at that point, that no matter what I tried to say to her to try and make her understand that she was wrong, like, she just wasn't having it. And that's obviously because she was a narcissist. So she started talking shit about my dad, and I told her, I didn't even know what a boundary was back at this time, right? Like, this just all came over me because I was just fed up. Like, I was completely fed the fuck up with her. So she's talking shit about my dad, and I literally said to her, like, we're not talking about this. And then she continued talking about it. So then I decided that my boundary needed a consequence. And I literally said, if you continue talking about this, we're leaving. and Christmas dinner's ending right now. We're not going to eat dessert, and I'm walking out of this house. And of course, she continued talking shit about my dad. So then I actually followed through with my threat. So she actually started talking only to my husband. Like, she decided to block me out of the conversation. I was at the same fucking table. But instead, she started talking to my then fiance at the time, now husband, about how stupid I was for not wanting to listen to her. So she was literally talking shit about me right in front of my face. And talking about how, you know, my dad screwed us over and all this stuff, but really it was her who screwed me over all this time, and she got to benefit off of everything. But that's none of my business, of course, right? Like, I only had to suffer the consequences of it for all those years. So, you know, as soon as she did that, I got up, I got my coat, I got my husband's coat, I got my dog's coat, loaded my dog up in his wheelchair, because my dog is the best. He's handicapped. He slipped a disc when he was 3. He's completely not in pain right now. He's been like this for like 8 years. He's a happy little dude. So I loaded him up in his wheels. If you want to see pictures of him, his Instagram is Chewy_on_wheels, and that's Chewy with a Y. He's the cutest little bastard. So I, you know, I got him ready, I got myself ready, I handed my husband his coat, and we literally walked out. And then I felt so guilty about it. And then, of course, as soon as I got home, I realized that I left his dog food at my mom's house. And this is prescription dog food, and we were running low, and we brought literally the entire box of it just for convenience to avoid, like, the Tupperware fucking shit show that Tupperware can be. So I had to go back and pick up the dog food, and it was a disaster. Like, I literally just went, grabbed the food, and left, and like, she was still yapping away, but I just left. Like, it was interesting. It was definitely I don't know how I got through that, to be honest. Like, I had not too much knowledge on everything, but I just knew that I had to get the fuck away. So yeah, I felt really guilty after that, but I didn't know what to do with my guilt, obviously, so I just repressed it, of course. And then in 2017, I did not spend any time with my mother at all. So I actually pretended that my phone was broken, so she was actually calling me before Christmas, on Christmas, and then after Christmas, and I just never answered the phone. I'd listen to the voicemails, and it was just her screaming at me, like, Adriana, it's Christmas. Why aren't you coming? Like, you know, stuff like that. Or like, why are you ignoring me? All that kind of stuff. And then she'd say stuff in the voicemails of like, you know, ever since you started talking to your father, you've been different. And it's like, well, you know, kind of true, but it's kind of your fault, because I found out the truth, and I found out like I found the supporting documents. But anyways, she tried to guilt me, and then I didn't really get into contact with her until like February, and that's when I told her like, oh yeah, my phone was broken. So that's why I didn't return your call. So, you know, whatever. She was pretty pissed about that. In Christmas 2018, I actually decided to lie to her and tell her that I was in Cuba on a resort for Christmas, and that's why I wouldn't be going. So that was like, I still felt guilty that I was lying, but it was like my best way to protect myself at that time. And then Christmas 2019, I just straight up told her, like, because that's, you know, after I did a ton of healing work, I straight up told her, like, I'm not doing Christmas with you this year. And then, you know, she tried to complain about it and stuff, and then I literally just said, like, gotta go, bye, and I hung up on her. So that's kind of how I handled it in 2019 with the very low / almost no contact. And of course, this Christmas, I don't really have anything to worry about because she passed away. So, you know, that's one less thing that I have to deal with, but I would have probably dealt with it in the same way as 2019, or just completely ignored her altogether. And I just am sharing this so that, you know, you can see that you're probably going through this too, and it's completely normal, and it's okay that you don't want to spend Christmas with any toxic family members this year. Now, this year, of course, is a little different with COVID, and obviously, you have a really good excuse to not go. And they might be even pressuring you to do a Zoom event with them, but you can still say no, okay? Literally, no is a full sentence. No thank you is also a full sentence. And if you have already said yes, you still have time to say no, okay? And even if you say yes and you attend, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, you have the option of also leaving early when shit hits the fan and you realize, fuck, I shouldn't have attended this altogether, because that also will probably happen if you do attend. So here is your permission slip to say no or to leave early or whatever works for you, and get yourself away from these people, because they suck. Like, they are not going to stop abusing you. They're not going to change. They're not going to be a big happy family just because it's Christmas or whatever. It's literally like they don't change just because it's the holidays. But maybe they try to make you feel like they change. Or maybe society is pressuring you to like be nice to them because it's a holiday or whatever. And all of that is bullshit, because at the end of the day, you know exactly how your family is. You know who these people are. And you don't need to subject yourself to their abuse, okay? And I also want to emphasize that when toxic family abuses you, they are making a choice. If anybody does not think that it's a choice, I want you to consider the fact that they know how to act normally and when to act normally when they are trying to get people on their side, whether that's during a smear campaign against you or, you know, the love bombing stage or whatever it is. Like, they know how to behave. They know how to treat people properly. They know how not to abuse people, and they only abuse a select few people. So chances are you are the only person or one of 2 or 3 people who does get abused by this particular family member. And that's why everybody else around is enabling the abuse, because they can't see it, because they don't get abused by that person. And that is, you know, enablers can be just as toxic as the narcissists themselves. And it's okay for you to disengage from those people as well. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there and let you know that it's literally okay to say no. It's literally okay to not want to engage with these people during Christmas, during any time, or whatever. And you might get pushback. You probably will get pushback. Like, it's to be expected in these types of situations. And I want you to also know that you are not crazy because of that pushback. Because there's people who either don't want to understand because they're so closed-minded and they're so like, this is how the world works and that's it. And I am not open to any other person's reality or whatever. And that kind of sucks for them, because that's just how they're going to continue living their life. And they're probably going to be met with more things that they disagree with in the future as more and more, you know, of the reality that families might not always have your back comes to, you know, to a light or whatever. So just understand that. And it's okay to be upset by their bad behavior, from like how a narcissist behaves to you and abuses you. Like, abuse is something that people get pissed off about. So you're not crazy for reacting negatively to somebody else's abuse, but your family will probably try and make you feel like you are crazy, so that you feel guilty and you feel ashamed of yourself and you feel like something's wrong with you and that you're the person who needs to fix themselves, because somehow the common denominator is you here. And there's nothing wrong with them. And by you believing that there is something wrong with you, that keeps you in a state of guilt, fear, obligation, shame, etc. And that makes you so much easier to control from a narcissist's point of view. So if they can instill those emotions in you, which they do, and they probably have been, especially if it's your family, they've been doing it since you were born, you know, making you feel like you owe your family something for bringing you into this world and giving you the so-called gift of life or whatever, right? Like that you never asked for, you just kind of, you know, didn't have any choice to be born to these people, but they try to make you feel guilty about it. And when you feel guilty, it's easier for them to control you because it's easier to repress that guilt. And when you repress the guilt, you act on the guilt. And when you act on the guilt, you make decisions such as deciding to try and keep the peace for one more year. And then maybe next year I'll go low contact or no contact. Or next year I'll have that peaceful holiday time or whatever. But you can do that this year if you want to. I just wanted to throw that out there. I really hope this helps. Like, you know, the whole purpose of this episode is just giving you that permission slip that, like, it's okay to do what you want. Like, you're an adult, you can make your own decisions, and if other people, even if they're your family, even if you share a lot of DNA strands with them and they try to make you feel guilty about it, it doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them not abusive. At the end of the day, you know what you went through. You know what they're all about. And your mental health is very important. Your mental health and your emotional health and the relationship you have with yourself is the most important thing. It's the most valuable thing. It's the thing that is going to improve your life, and, you know, it's very important. Now, pushback from other people, right? Like acquaintances, coworkers, whatever, they might get judgy. And if they get judgy, again, these people are people who would get judgy over anything. And you know, they might have just very rigid belief systems about how life is supposed to be and stuff like that. And they're just going to continue going through life judging everybody that they come into contact with. And that's the thing with judgmental people. Like, they're not people that you really want to have in your life, because what value do they bring you if they're just judging everything that you do when you know what's right for you and they have not walked a minute in your shoes? They have no idea what you've been through. They have no idea how, you know, abusive and manipulative and horrendous your family is. And they can't say shit, but they will. And that can reinforce the belief that there's something wrong with you, but there is nothing wrong with you. Okay? And that's the thing. When you're a human, like, humans experience emotions, and sometimes, most of the time, when you're an adult child of a narcissist, those emotions are louder than your intuition. So your intuition already knows that these people are toxic and not good for your mental health, all that. But you can't hear your intuition when you're clouded with these emotions. So that's why it's so important to do the inner work. That's why it's so important to check in with yourself about how you feel. And check in with yourself of, like, am I acting on guilt, or am I acting on fear, or am I acting on shame, or whatever emotion is there, or am I actually honoring myself and what I want for my life and my mental health? So I encourage you to ask yourself those questions. I encourage you to journal, because that's always very helpful, and you never know what you will come up with when you do journal. So I think I'm going to end this here. I hope this has been helpful. I feel like it was a bit of a ramble, but at the same time, I think this is going to be really helpful for anybody who might be on the fence right now, but like, oh, should I go to the Zoom call or not? Or should I go to the family event or not? You don't have to. You literally don't fucking have to. And if you want to explore this even more, I would recommend checking out my workshop replay. I'm going to put the link in the description. There is the replay of the video, there's the replay of the audio, there is all of the presentation slides. There's like 67 slides that you will have in a PDF document, as well as a workshop workbook, and it goes into a lot more of the inner work around all of this, and that exists, right? Like, I created this exactly for somebody who struggles with this. So I hope that that's helpful. I hope that, you know, by having this available, it's something that can help you this year or next year or whatever. And even if you're not low or no contact yet, it could really help you for future years on dealing with this whole situation. So I will throw all of that information there in the description. And, you know, regardless, I do hope that this episode has been helpful for anybody who's just on the fence and not sure. if they should skip the holiday event this year or suck it up and just do it. You don't have to suck it up and just do it, because you don't. You don't have to. You can say no. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries with your family. And just because society says bullshit like family is everything, okay? Like I made a post on Instagram the other day about how family is not everything, right? If your family is a threat to your mental and emotional health, you do not need to keep up the charade that they're everything, right? Whatever society has to say about that, like, again, society has not lived a day in your shoes, and family is having each other's backs and not manipulating each other and not sabotaging each other's success or goals, and, you know, just treating each other with respect. And sometimes this family is not people that you share DNA with, or, you know, that you're related with through adoption, or whatever your situation may be. Your family could literally be the family you create. It could be you, your significant other, and your dog. It could be you guys and your kid. It could be you and yourself. It could be your friends. It could be a group of friends that you consider your family, and that's completely valid. Like, you know, and if you are in the situation where there is nobody right now, that's okay too. Work on that relationship with you, because then that is going to help you create better relationships with healthy people, right? And for anyone who is struggling with feelings of loneliness this holiday season, I see you too. I get it. And even if you have that family that you've already created, but you still feel lonely around the holidays, that's okay. That's part of being human. It's part of the healing process from, you know, disengaging from your family of origin and allowing yourself to feel into those emotions that are part of the loneliness. So whether that's grief, right? Because it's like an ending of relationships with people that were supposed to be people you could trust, but they weren't. You're allowed to grieve that. So let yourself grieve that. That's going to be the fastest way to move through those emotions that you don't want to feel, by actually feeling them. You know, like by allowing yourself to feel lonely, that kind of shows you that it's okay and safe to feel lonely, and that you're not going to die from feeling lonely. I know this is oversimplifying it completely. Like, I get it. But, you know, just wanting to plant the seed there that, like, it's okay to feel like shit when stuff is shit. And by letting yourself acknowledge that it's shit and letting yourself feel that shit, that is how you get that feeling of shit to go away a lot faster than by continuing to run away from it. Okay? So again, I'm going to end this here. This is probably like the 5th time I said I'm ending this episode, but now for real. And yeah, I hope you have as good of a Christmas, if that's what you celebrate, as possible this year, or whatever you celebrate, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, you don't even need to put a tree up this year if you don't want to. Like, it's all good. 2020 has been a weird, very weird year altogether. So, like, there's no right or wrong way to celebrate or not celebrate, or care or not care about it. It is all good. Like, do what's right for you, and let that be okay. Let that be okay that you can do things that are right for you and not right for everybody else, because everybody else is also an adult, and if they can't deal with it and they are projecting that onto you, right? Like, they can deal with it. It's just they want to project their shit onto you to make you feel guilty in order to manipulate you into, you know, attending the event or whatever it is that they're wanting from you. And that's their goal. And you don't have to do that anymore. Like, you can be at that point where it's like, I am not having this anymore because this is bullshit. And that's perfectly fine and acceptable. And even if society disagrees with it, who cares, right? Like, whatever. Let yourself feel whatever emotions are there, and understand that your decision to disengage from these people, even if it's the holidays, is a completely okay decision to make. Alrighty, so enjoy. Have a happy new year if I don't come back before the new year on the podcast, but I might not. I don't know. It's a surprise. I'll surprise myself with whatever I decide to do with a potential episode next year. Anyways, that's all I've got for now. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you either next week or next year. Okay, Bye.